Cardone Capital had been under investigation by a federal agency for the better part of 2 years. Undercover federal agents were posing as employees inside of Cardone Capital. Why wouldn't our partners tell us that this was going on? We're inside the organization. We're their partners. We're their co-founders. It would be really interesting for Cardone Ventures to publicly disclose their income statement, balance sheet, and their P&L. Is that enterprise designed to collect fees or designed to scale businesses? Our story appears now to be a pattern. Promises made, and then the documents and the legal stranglehold that they put you in are very, very, very different. The experience of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs, shareholders, former employees, people that were previously with the organization, previously partnered with the organization, that have had the exact same experience as my wife and I. And those stories will be told very soon in the public domain.
On December 26th, Gary Brecka and his wife Sage, both co-founders of 10X Health, made worldwide headlines when they sued Grant Cardone and Grant's wife, Elena Cardone, in separate lawsuits on the same day. Elena Cardone was sued for $100 million for defamation. Grant Cardone and Brandon Dawson of Cardone Ventures were sued for unspecified damages for breach of contract. In this interview, Gary and I discuss how it all started and where it all went wrong. Gary also provides the first confirmation that Grant Cardone was aware that Cardone Capital was being investigated by the feds in a multi-year, sophisticated undercover investigation, placing agents inside the company. This could amount to material non-public information that Grant Cardone failed to disclose to investors in Cardone Capital. We take a close look at whether Cardone Ventures is a company that makes its money by helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses, or rather does it make its money from squeezing all available fees that it can out of its partner companies, leaving many of those companies failed and broke. I suspect Gary's lawsuit against Cardone Ventures will be the first of many. If you've been taken advantage of by Cardone Ventures or its CEO, Brandon Dawson, you can call 305-603-0805 to leave confidential information for Gary's legal team to review. Here's my interview with Gary Brecka. Okay, good. Gary, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Super happy to be here, man.
So my audience, I'll tell you what my audience already knows, which is that, a lot of people talk about Grant Cardone online for a lot of reasons, but the only reason I do it is because Grant's, at this point, one of the biggest Scientology recruiters in the world, and he's one of the biggest financial supporters of Scientology. So as long as that's the case, I'll always have a reason to talk about Grant. I happen to have experience in the real estate space. I happen to have experience in the finance space, but that's really not why I talk about Grant Cardone at all. That being said, we're here today to talk about your lawsuit against Cardone Ventures, Brandon Dawson, Elena Cardone. And while we're talking about all this, I'll squeeze in some questions about Scientology if you don't mind.
You can. I mean, I should make it clear, my challenges with Cardone Ventures and Brandon Dawson and Natalie Dawson and Grant have nothing to do with their religious beliefs. It's a free country. I think everybody should have an opportunity to believe in whatever they want to believe and pursue whatever religious orientation they want. I personally do not have an issue with their belief in Scientology.
Totally. No question about that. And I don't expect really most people in the world to have any idea what Scientology is, much less have a problem with it the way former Scientologists would and people who grew up in it. So that's okay. Not the issue of that's not the real topic of this chat, but I'll squeeze in some questions just to test some waters. Sure. You know what? I already watched one of the other interviews that you did, which is a fantastic interview with JT Fox. People can check that interview out. Based on what you guys have discussed, I have some things I'd like to drill down into. Before we do that, let me mention this. 2.5 years ago, I did a video on my channel about, it wasn't Cardone Ventures, it was Cardone Capital. I'd been contacted by a whistleblower, a former insider, high-level insider at Cardone Capital, who told me that he had taken boxes of evidence, walked into the local Miami field office of the FBI, turned the evidence over to them. An investigation was started that included placing listening and recording devices inside Cardone's offices. It included collecting trash, collecting shredding. There's never been, other than my videos and maybe some other journalists who've spoken to the same sources, there's never been any other independent confirmation that this was ever happening, that whether it's still happening. Do you happen to have any knowledge about what I'm talking about? Is there anything you can either confirm or deny on this subject?
Yes. I mean, my wife and I, on October 15th, of last year, we flew to Malibu, in an effort to quietly kind of resolve our differences with Cardone Ventures. At the time, we had an offer to buy the company on the table, and Grant was considering that offer. And since things started with Grant and I was hoping that they would kind of end with the discussion with Grant and I. So my wife and I were in Las Vegas, and I called Grant and said, "Hey, you're in Malibu. Why don't we jump over to Malibu? Why don't the three of us, Sage, my wife, and you and I, sit down and let's see if we can come to an agreement." We had an offer to buy their shares, and we also offered to sell them our shares at the same valuation. And at the time, Grant was very receptive to it, and he said, "Yeah, come out. Let's sit and have a discussion. I want to do the right thing by you and the right thing by Sage." And so we flew out to LA, and we went to Grant's Malibu home. And it was really shocking, what he told us. We were on the back balcony there, a beautiful balcony out by the ocean. Grant and I were having a cigar. Sage was sitting on the couch next to Grant. It's around 7 o'clock on October 15th. And he very casually told us that Cardone Capital had been under investigation by a federal agency for the better part of 2 years, and that undercover federal agents were posing as employees inside of Cardone Capital. And Sage and my heart sank, because we're also investors in Cardone Capital. When we sold our business, when we sold Streamline to 10X Health Ventures and Cardone Ventures, the money that we received from the sale, portion of the money was paid over a 3-year period, but the cash that we received from the sale, we immediately just put into Cardone Capital, into the real estate fund. And that was never our concern. I never saw any indication. Of course, I wasn't involved in the organization, but again, the people that were on board that ship were some very close friends of mine, very good people. And when Grant told us that that organization was under a federal investigation and that they had employees that were posing as employees of Cardone Capital, in furtherance of this investigation, which I assume was a criminal investigation, Sage got nauseous. When we got back in the car leaving Grant's Malibu home, it was a very heavy ride. And he also let us know that Brandon knew about this. And, Brandon was our partner. Brandon Dawson was one of our co-founders in 10X Health. He was also our partner. He was also invested in Cardone Capital. And Sage was just distraught. She said, "Why wouldn't our partners tell us that this was going on? We're inside the organization. We're their partners. We're their co-founders. We don't need to go public with this information, but we're investors in your fund. We're partners in 10X Health. We took a minority stake. We sold our baby to you guys. We're giving our life to this. If there's something going on that we should know about, why wouldn't they tell us?" And I was shocked that this had been going on during the term that we were both investors and partners, and no one thought that we should be told about it. So initially, Cardone Capital was not our concern, and my issues are not with Cardone Capital. Ours are with Brandon Dawson, Natalie Dawson, and Cardone Ventures. And a year and a half before that meeting, Sage and I told Grant to his face that Natalie Dawson and Brandon Dawson and Cardone Ventures would be the downfall of the organization. And
the downfall of the organization you were a part of, or the downfall of
the organization that we were a part of. And it would really taint Grant's business because of just the predatory way that we were being treated. And we were beginning to hear rumblings of other business owners being treated the same way, other entrepreneurs being treated the same way. Staff members were resigning. Staff members were quietly confiding in us. And now that we've filed this lawsuit and publicly driven a stake in the ground, I can't even tell you what the kinds of calls that are coming into this hotline are heart-wrenching. I mean, they're really heartbreaking. And they are very coincidental with the pattern that we saw, that my wife and I experienced inside of Cardone Ventures. And we're experiencing the same thing now with, the phone line just lighting up at our law firm, and to us personally, and to Sage personally, with, former shareholders, entrepreneurs, business owners, employees, C-level executives that were in the Cardone Ventures organization, just telling us about the, very intentional practices that they have inside of that organization to strip fees from companies. I mean, it would be really interesting for Cardone Ventures to publicly disclose their income statement, balance sheet, and their P&L, and just say, hey, we're here to show you how to scale your business. We're the experts at scaling businesses. Here's our income statement, our balance sheet, our P&L. Here's how we're scaling Cardone Ventures. And just look and see, is that organization scaling because it is growing the businesses that are on its platform, or is it scaling because of the fees that they're stripping out of the businesses? Promise made and a fee charged. Promise made and a fee charged. A promise made and a fee charged. And is the business a fee-based business? Is it a business that makes its money from the strategic business unit's advice and from stripping fees out of companies like ours, like 10X Health? I mean, 10X Health paid millions of dollars in fees to Cardone Ventures for strategic business advice and scaling advice, even though our largest partner was Cardone Ventures. We still paid them fees. We paid a percentage of our gross profit every single month to them, even though they were the majority shareholder in the company. And is that enterprise designed to collect fees or designed to scale businesses? And be a really interesting exercise. And I think it would be very enlightening to a lot of entrepreneurs that are looking at what's said from that stage and what's promised on social media and what's truly happening behind the scenes.
That's a good point. In your previous interview, when you mentioned something about every time you would contact either Brandon or Grant about some problem you needed to resolve or something that was going wrong in the business or something you wanted to discuss, it was the response was something like, and correct me if I'm misquoting you, but do the next training component, do the next Cardone University course, come to the next Growth Con, and I couldn't help but be reminded of the multi-level marketing space, where every time someone in the downline goes to someone in their upline with looking to resolve a problem, it's basically pay more money, do the next thing. It's always the next thing that's going to solve your problem. It's always the next thing. That's not how the business world works.
These events are very intoxicating. Our first big event with Grant Cardone was an intoxicating event. I mean, it was at Marlin Stadium. I think the capacity of that stadium is around 37,000. They claim to have 34,000 people there, but the whole swaths of that stadium were empty. The stage was in front of the rear portion of the stadium, which was completely empty. You see Grant Cardone parachute in from, several thousand feet, and parachute into the stadium. You later find out that it actually wasn't Grant Cardone. It was a stunt double.
No way.
He pretended to hurt his ankle. He actually pretended to injure his ankle and delayed the start of the event. There's celebrities on the stage. There's entertainers. There's music. It's a very intoxicating event. You're around people that want to be successful, that are there, that are full of hopes and full of dreams. And you're not really paying attention to the people running around with the clipboard. You don't know that behind the scenes that they're measuring sales by the hour. They're tracking sales by the hour so that the pitches can shift from the stage. They're trying not to let people leave before they get their credit card because they know that the chances of them leaving an event and then paying for products and services after they leave is trails off very quickly. And you just get caught up in this intoxicating environment because it appears like these celebrities have had an experience with the organization when really they're just paid to sit on the stage and tell their story. Reminds me of, Kamala Harris paying a bunch of celebrities to endorse it. And then you find out behind the scenes that they were paid $2 million or $500,000 or $1 million just to get up and give a few minute speech. But these events are really intoxicating, and you're around some people that are successful, and there are some success stories in the organization, but they don't talk about the failure rate. They never publicize the failure rate. You don't hear from the entrepreneurs whose businesses were charged these fees like we were. You don't hear about the legal threats like we would get on a regular basis. You don't hear about the oppressive continuation of, you need to go to this boot camp, this 360, this private event, this couples retreat. You have to put Cardone University into all, your organization. The reason why you're not succeeding is you don't have the strategic business unit running your operation. And it's just fees after fees after fees. And people are just, this is why the machine is so hungry. It needs a voluminous amount of new blood in the top of the funnel, because people are shooting out the bottom of this tube. I promise you, discovery and depositions cannot come soon enough, because these stories need to be told. My wife and I never expected to be the poster child for this. And now we find ourselves, so many people coming and going, thank you for actually standing up. Nobody's actually had the intestinal fortitude. And my reputation is about to go through the mud, because the next thing you're going to see is they're going to file defamation suits against me for interviews like this. They're going to try to silence the voice. The moment you speak up in that organization, it turns on you like an absolute serpent. And I mean, if you are an employee, if you are a shareholder, if you are an entrepreneur, and you have to decide whether or not you have the financial position to fight them, because their lawyers are very aggressive and they have very good lawyers. But by the same token, the real sad thing is that they're really good people in this organization, right? It's the management team that sets the tone for this toxic environment and forces the organization to sell products, to sell services, shove it down the throats of clients, as I'm referring just to 10X Health, that we know they don't need and that we know are not serving their biology. And they will do things without even bringing the clinical teams, the medical professionals on board and into the fold to help make a decision about whether or not this is in the best interest of this person's health journey. It's, how do we make more money? How do we take a test and inflate the price of the test? How do we inflate the price of our supplements and shove them down the throats? And when they see that competitors have products out there that are selling very well, and I mean, there are competitors of ours that are doing great things. We are not the only, and certainly Ultimate Human's not either, the only way to optimal health. There are great functional medicine clinics out there. There are incredible products and services and supplement companies that are doing the right thing by humanity, that have the best interest of their clients and their patients at heart. And they also deserve a voice. And every once in a while I would give them a voice and I would get another legal letter. You can't talk about hydrogen water. You can't talk about these amino acids. And then if they thought that there was a monetary opportunity, they would literally take a competitor's product, someone's life work. They would rip it off. They would send the formulation to their manufacturer. They would have the manufacturer try to repeat the formulation. And in some cases, they would go to the competitor's website, cut and from their website the definition and the explanation of their supplement that they formulated, that they tested, that they spent their life developing. They would paste that definition onto the 10X Health site and launch a competitive supplement. And it wouldn't even have the ingredients in it that the 10X Health site said were in that product. So in other words, it would claim to have nucleic acids, but it didn't have nucleic acids. Well, why would they make that claim? Because they cut the competitor's definition and pasted it on their site in such a haste to find shiny new objects that we could possibly make money with and shove down the throats of our clients. They wouldn't even do the simple level of diligence to say, hey, when we rip this product off from our competitor and put it on our site, we didn't even bother to delete the compounds that the competitor has that we don't. We just want to get it out there. Yeah. And then the labels wouldn't match up with the contents. And then they would ask Sage and I to promote it. And they would say, if you don't promote it, you're going to get another legal letter. We're going to shut your contract off. We're not going to pay you. We're going to legally threaten you. We're going to give you a cease and desist. And just such an abusive, toxic relationship. Eventually, it reached the point where we couldn't take it anymore. We planned to very quietly exit and try to pay homage to the employees that are there trying to do the right thing, to the clinicians and the PAs and the nurse practitioners and the doctors that really do have the best interest of these patients at heart. And we wanted to leave. And if you saw my post, it wasn't antagonistic, it wasn't aggressive. I didn't want to harm them. I didn't want to harm the company. We just wanted out. mean, we wanted, it was like an abusive relationship that you just can't take anymore. We just wanted nothing to do with it. And Grant, so we went to Grant, and Grant was originally receptive. He said, look, I don't really like the space myself. Why don't you make me an offer? I don't even like the sell space. And so we put an offer together. I called Grant one night and I said, hey, I want to play backgammon with you. He's great at backgammon, by the way. Don't play Grant Cardone in backgammon. I owe him a lot of money from playing backgammon, so which I intend to pay to him. But we had some great times playing backgammon. So I called him and I was like, hey, I want to come up and play backgammon with you tonight. And I sat down with him and I said, hey man, this is not working out. Sage and I don't want to be here anymore. Clearly the relationship is toxic, but let's not harm the patients. Let's not harm the clients. Let's not harm the employees. And there are a lot of people on this platform that rely on that make their living from 10X Health. Here's the offer. And it was a very substantial offer. We'll buy your shares out. And if you don't want to sell us your shares at that offer, we'll sell you our shares at the same offer. And their response was, we're not selling our shares to you at that price. It's too little, but we're not buying your shares at the same valuation because it's too much. And so now we're stuck. It's like a divorce that you just can't get out of.
Yeah. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
There's a part of the story that I heard you telling JT about taking clinicians, people who work in the medical field who feel like they're there for the patient and not primarily for the patient and not primarily for the money.
Yes.
And you created the organization that was then acquired by Cardone Ventures and became 10X Health. And your organization, although has to be profitable, was patient-driven, results-driven. And that after the acquisition, basically everyone was turned into a high-pressure salesman. Now,
no question.
The reason that resonated with me is because, and you have to, I don't know how much you know about my history, but I was essentially born and raised in Scientology and worked for them full-time from the age of 12 to about 26. So I know Scientology, you could call it, that Scientology would say it's the merging of religion and science, but really it would be the merging of religion and high pressure sales tactics.
Okay. So I'm unaware of that.
So the reason you'll see where I'm going with this is that there's a whole mess of business consulting groups that are run by Scientologists and licensed by Scientology. And they specialize in industries like dentistry, chiropractic, primarily dentistry and chiropractic, but they've gone into veterinarians and some financial advising and stuff like this. The focus of these business consulting groups is how to turn these independent private practices, these independently owned private practices, into high pressure sales machines. So, and the clients of these businesses are not necessarily Scientologists. They're non-Scientologists. But if you go into a dentist practice, for example, that is a client of one of these practices, when a patient comes in, their goal is to sell that patient as big of a package as possible. Their goal is not to provide as much value as possible. Their goal is how can we close a $30,000 package this week, Thursday before 2?
Oh, there's no question that I don't personally link that back to Scientology. Again, I really feel strongly that people should be able to believe in whatever they want to believe. And I will drive a stake in the ground and say that I do business with and have very close friends that are Scientologists that don't act like that. But to that end, and I'm not pointing this at Scientology, that's exactly what happened with our organization. At one point when Brandon brought his wife in to run the organization, which almost bankrupt the organization, when he brought his wife in to run the organization, the clinical teams, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, reported to sales. And they were forced, their jobs were threatened if they didn't watch Cardone University, Art of the Sale, negotiating the close, sell or be sold. And we ended up doing an internal employee survey. And there was such resistance to this. There was so much toxic disdain for this environment where licensed practitioners were being rewarded and forced to sell what you're referring to, packages, products, services, peptides and other things. And inside the organization, the popular people, the successful people were highlighted as the ones making the most sale, not the ones that were making the most impact. Right. And I understand that if on a real estate side, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me on the real estate side that you would want to incentivize sale leads, maybe even on the business scaling side. But our specific issue is in the practice of healthcare. And when a patient trusts you to give you their blood, they trust you to put compounds into their body. The level of trust that they have in you goes way beyond the level of trust they need to have in order to write you a check for an investment. And if they lose that money, well, then they've lost an investment. But if you harm their health, this is, in my opinion, a whole different category. And we should be very intentional about what we're doing for clients and patients, which the medical team was. And the majority of people on the platform were. It's just that you have this management team forcing sales. We would have daily sales calls where they would do role play for sales for people that were managing the healthcare of clients and patients. And they would sort of laugh at, a woman objecting to paying so much money to buy a product and saying, you don't need to talk to your husband. It's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. What credit card would you like to use? And which is cringy. I mean, and there was such a revolt from our clinical team when they did an internal survey that they stopped terminating people for not completing Cardone University. At one point, if you didn't do 3 Cardone Universities in a row, you were terminated, even if you were a board certified doctor. And so, this oppressive orientation towards sales was not why we started the company. It wasn't what was leading to our success. What led to our success was we had a good product and a good service that was not only helping humanity, it was reasonably priced based on everything else in the market, and it worked. And we had tens of thousands of people that were having positive outcomes. And then purely, in my opinion, through greed, Cardone Ventures went out and bought companies outside 10X Health and then forced 10X Health to do business with them without the consultation of Sage and myself as co-founders, without the consultation of the proper medical teams, without even really having the heads of the organization, like their own president, on board. And it's really sad who's no longer with the organization. I think if you count Natalie, Graham, or I guess we're on our 4th president now. But and it was really sad because you have well-intentioned people that would see the videos and hear the testimonials and go, I want to be a part of that journey. I want to be on a platform of a company that is in service to humanity, that is making those kinds of changes in people's lives. And they would do our gene test and get on our supplements and have a really positive outcome. And they go, man, it changed my life and changed the life of my family. I want to go work for these guys. And then you get inside and realize, whoa, this is not at all what was promised. And that's what was really sad for us.
Let me ask you another question here. I imagine that potential clients, potential partners, potential future investors, when they hear about lawsuits like yours, and when they hear about federal investigations, one of the primary concerns is going to be: is there some underlying element of this business, some element of fraud or other illegality that poses some sort of existential future risk to the business? And when you hear Grant admitting that there's a multi-year FBI or other federal agency investigation, that's going to really get people's attention. Did Grant indicate, one, how did he know, since these investigations are usually confidential and sort of undercover? And did he indicate whether he knew that the investigation had already ended?
He didn't indicate whether or not it had ended. He indicated that nothing had come out of it yet. He didn't tell me exactly when it started. I think he did mention to Sage and I that day, on October 15th, that the investigation had been ongoing for 2 years. So we started to rewind how long we had been in business with them. And to be clear, he intimated that it was Cardone Capital and not Cardone Ventures. So
Right.
we're
Sure.
investors in Cardone Capital. We are not partners there. We were both really kind of shocked how casual he was about telling us that. And it made my wife physically sick leaving the house that day. And because we were also in a position where we had raised money and wanted to take back the organization. We wanted to rename it The Ultimate Human. We wanted to get back to our original mission, was to be in service to humanity. And we wanted to get rid of this abject failure of gene test. And we didn't want to send patients' DNA halfway around the world to a lab in Austria. We didn't want to have supplements manufactured halfway around the world and shipped back to the United States. We had such a negative experience personally with the supplements, which we told the organization about. My wife had panic attacks and severe headaches. I immediately got acid reflux. And then we started asking questions about the plant compounds. And they said, well, we've never really tested the plant compounds. We have research on the supplements. The supplements were vastly different than the supplements we already had. Some of the gene tests didn't match up. So we'd run a gene test here in the States, and then they would run it in Austria, and the genes wouldn't even match up. It didn't make a lot of sense to us, which is why we refused to
Wow.
sell. But and we were very vocal about this in the organization. And they said, well, it's too late. We've already taken, I think at the time they had taken 6,500 tests. And so we're just going to press on the gas. So instead of just stopping it and getting back to our core business, which was really doing well, because they bought this company outside, they just stood on it. They just forced it down everybody's throats. And, and the revenues began to decline. Of course, Brandon wanted to blame that on me. He said, it's because you're talking about hydrogen water or cold plunging, or you're telling people about sunlight and grounding and other things that we don't offer at 10X Health. But the truth is that, the platform that we built was the largest source of leads for the company. So it was a great synergistic relationship. We had such a great thing going.
Yeah.
I was doing hundreds of stage talks and interviews and podcasts, and I really believed in the organization and the outcome and the mission, the supplements. And that day at Grant's house, I will never forget that day. And I don't think my wife will ever forget that day either, because it caused us to come to a full stop and say, why wouldn't our partner, Brandon Dawson, if he was aware of an investigation by a federal agency, which I assume was a criminal investigation, with undercover agents posing as employees inside of our, sister company, why wouldn't he make us aware of that? I never saw that they made investors aware of it. I don't know what the legality is, but there are the requirements for that disclosure. So I'm not accusing them of not disclosing something that they should have.
I mean, if you become aware of it, it sounds like it's material information to me, but what do I know? I grew up in a cult. Let me jump in with another question here, Gary. I was very intrigued by that. The fact that it was very clear from some of your comments with JT that Brandon and Grant's vision for 10X Health was to really pour gasoline, on the revenue and get it ready to IPO. And that by jacking up the prices, by making the services of 10X Health, the products and services, unaffordable to most of the people, it ended up kind of destroying the thing that they were trying to build. Was that the experience?
So sad. That was exactly the experience, because initially my conversations with Grant were very, patient and client centric. Grant told me early on, he said, go build your personal brand and use it to lend credibility to the company. That's what I did. I built a personal brand around myself, and I used it to lend credibility to the company. I went on and did exactly that. And then I got, admonished for it. And even though it was working, I built an amazing personal brand, tried to be as authentic about the messaging as possible. And I made a lot of mistakes too. I used to quote articles and not research, and there's information in the public domain, that I've said that I wish I didn't say, but the intention was there to authentically message and really build 10X Health by being on as many stages and as many podcasts and as many interviews and in as many rooms as I could evangelize this story to. And I believed in it and still believe in our original mission in a way that was like, intoxicating. It was my purpose, my passion, my wife's too. I felt like it was God's calling for me. And the majority of the organization was on board for that too. And everybody followed along. But then what happened was Grant said, we need to go to the masses. I remember one time we were at a dinner before a growth con at MGM, and we were walking out of this dinner. There was a bunch of us there. And he put his arm around me and we're walking through the casino and he goes, you know who your clients are? It's that guy sitting right there. It's that old lady right there. It's that young family right there. These are your clients. Don't go so hard after the celebrities and the A-listers and all of these folks that have all this money. We need to go to the masses. And I said, you know what, you're right. Our products, our services need to be for the masses. And so we built the whole thing around the masses. And then all of a sudden, the very idea that Grant had, Cardone Ventures just ignored it and said, we're going to put an expensive product out. We're going to force a family of four to spend almost $20,000 on supplements and testing, which is just so egregious and so untenable for the masses. And we're going to make these, supplements so expensive, and we're going to make the tests so costly that we're actually going to wipe out the people that we purport to serve. We're actually going to admit this entire class of people that we built the company to serve. It just didn't make any sense. Yeah. And then the environment was just toxic. Management created an environment of fear. People feared for their jobs. They feared being sued. And I'm not just talking about, the employees and us as partners, but also these business owners and entrepreneurs that felt like if they spoke up, they were going to find themselves in a lawsuit. And now I'm the beneficiary of that, But I want to make sure that I don't know anything other than what Grant told me about that investigation. I don't want to say anything negative about his religious beliefs.
That's my job.
I just
I know it makes you uncomfortable. I'll make the Scientology comments, and you don't anything I say in this video about Scientology is not a reflection of anything of Gary's opinions. There's no tacit endorsement going on here. In a video I did back in July 2023, it was reading from this was some article. It's a quote from the Department of Justice's former most senior fraud prosecutor. It says Paul Peltier, who was the Department of Justice's most senior fraud prosecutor during a 25-year career at the agency, reviewed the documents in the class action case against Grant Cardone. Quote, "It looks like his business is built on lies and deception that will likely collapse, leaving investors holding an empty bag," he said. Now, obviously, again, this is not a quote about Cardone Ventures.
Right.
This is a quote about, that's got to be Cardone Capital. Is there, in your opinion, when you look at the promises being made by Cardone Ventures and what they are promising to do for young, hardworking, dedicated entrepreneurs, has your experience left you with the impression that there is some element of fraud? And I don't mean in a legal, well, I guess we're talking about a legal case. I was going to say, I don't mean in a legal sense, because I'm not the expert on what is legally fraud or not. Are there lies, deception, false promises that people need to be aware of about Cardone Ventures?
I can just tell you from my experience and the experience of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs, shareholders, former employees, people that were previously with the organization, previously partnered with the organization, that have had the exact same experience as my wife and I. And those stories will be told very soon in the public domain. Our story is not unique to us. Our story appears now to be a pattern of promises made, I mean, in a very intoxicating environment full of music and fireworks and celebrities and A-listers and rap artists and fun, promises made, and then the documents and the legal stranglehold that they put you in are very, very, very different. And so, whereas we thought our story was unique, we found that our story is absolutely similar to dozens, if not hundreds, of other people that had the exact same experience. The legal threats, the oppressive contracts, the oppressive amount of fees stripped from their organizations. I have an opinion that there is a reason why businesses of certain values are targeted, because larger businesses could afford the fight. 2 years ago, my wife and I would have never been able to afford the fight. They could have easily choked us out, and we would have quietly gone away. Now we're in a different position, to stay the course of this. And initially it was just for ourselves, but now we're finding ourselves, we're going to be the poster child for all of these entrepreneurs and business owners and former employees that were treated the same way that we were. And I'm actually excited that we can give them a voice, that we can put them on the platform and allow them to tell their story. So you don't have to take my word for it. I'm sure every word that I say right now is going to have a defamation suit.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, look, I think one of the best things that could happen from this, other than you being victorious in your lawsuit, is other people having the courage to come forward and tell the same stories, whether they bring lawsuits or not.
You would not believe the courage of some of these people. And I can't emphasize enough, these stories are heartbreaking. They are absolutely gut-wrenching. I mean, the exact same pattern that happened to my wife and I has happened to so many people, and they never had a voice. Yeah. And eventually, when people that were inside that organization, that were very prominent in that organization, begin to tell their story and how commiserate it is with the broken backs of entrepreneurs that went through the same thing that my wife and I did, then the truth will be out there. Can
I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Not that long ago, you were on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'll tell you, I was like, oh shit, he's not wearing a 10X Fitness t-shirt. I was like,
I got a cease and desist for that, by the
way. I did a whole video just about you not wearing the 10X Fitness t-shirt and speculating as to what the hell that meant. And also, I don't mind saying, I also did a video about Dana White did at least an 8-minute, maybe 18-minute, I can't remember, promo video on the UFC channel with you. And although some of the equipment in the B-roll said 10X Fitness, if you were looking closely, 10X Fitness was not mentioned once in the entire thing. It was just you. And he was talking about his health journey. So, I found out about you and 10X Fitness through Dana White and Joe Rogan. I was interested to hear that you were introduced to Dana White through Elena Cardone's Scientologist friend, Carrie Kasem. You may not even know Carrie's a Scientologist, and I have no idea how Carrie got a relationship with Dana, but I guess, let me give you what's my actual question here? Yeah. How were you able to get all of these extremely valuable relationships? Were they pre-existing, or did they come through Cardone and 10X Ventures?
I mean, there's no question that
not 10X Ventures, Cardone Ventures.
Ecosystem was helped, propel my exposure, and certainly helped propel the exposure of 10X Health. I mean, I don't accuse them of not giving me exposure or giving 10X Health exposure. I mean, Grant had a big platform, and it did give us a lot of exposure. A lot of these celebrities and A-listers, Kardashians, for example, were on board before they acquired our company. We weren't a failing vitamin shop in a strip mall. We were a profitable functional medicine clinic that happened to be in a strip mall. I took great offense to Elena's comments, because it not only was directed at me, but the clinic director that was my clinic director at the time is now their clinic director. Some of the people that worked for me at Streamline still work for that company. And to really besmirch their work and their effort, the way that she did to say that we bought your failing strip mall vitamin business, I took great offense to that. And for the record, I am not suing Elena Cardone for money. I am suing Elena Cardone for accountability. I have publicly disclosed that every dime after recouping our legal fees that we recover from that defamation suit is going to our veterans, our firefighters, our first responders, and our men and women in blue. And whatever we recover is not going to go into my pocket or my wife's pocket. It will go into a fund, and it will be exhausted paying for testing and supplements and services for that community that really serves us, because that's the community we intentionally began trying to serve, not just veterans and firefighters, but it was meant for the masses. And that company was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And I don't think that Cardone Ventures is in the habit of buying failing strip mall businesses. It was really an offense to Cardone Ventures too, to say that, their business objective is to go find failing businesses in strip malls and take them over and turn them into profitable companies. I don't think that's ever been their MO. They want to find decently run companies that have decent management teams, and they have committed founders, and they want to try to grow those companies, which is exactly why they chose to partner with us, and it had a great experience. And the reason why, I call this the Wall of Fame. You see this Wall of Fame out back here. I mean, these are all 10X Health clients. I mean, what we were doing was working. If you go to 10X's Instagram page, you'll find that when they spend tens of thousands of dollars with social media celebrities or influencers, they'll get tens of thousands of views. When I would put a 10X client like a Michael Chandler or Steve Harvey or someone on the Ultimate Human podcast, they would get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. I spoke at Elena Cardone's 10X Ladies event. I believe the videos that I did for her 10X Ladies got more views than any other video that they produced. I got upwards of 22 million views on some of those videos. And so what we did worked. And that's why you see this Wall of Fame grew. It wasn't because what we did didn't work. It's because what we did work. And I was on the deck of 10X Health. So that credibility belonged to 10X Health and to me. And what's frustrating is I find now, when they put these videos on social media, for example, Dana White on the stage of a GrowthCon event, they will surgically snip out the comment where he says, Gary Brecka did this.
Really?
Gary Brecka did that. And they'll cut that portion out to make it appear as though he's talking specifically about either Grant or 10X Health. And then the people that were at that event will shred them in the comments below, and then they'll just delete those comments. And so I started to realize that the cognitive facade that was going on out there, it began with finding out that Grant Cardone didn't even parachute into the stadium. I was like, but I thought he hurt his ankle, and they gave medical attention. And then you just start to see how intentional a lot of this really is. And it's designed to, in my opinion, to take people's fear that they will fail, and people's hope that they will succeed, and prey on those two emotions. And put them in the top of a funnel that strips them of fees. And this is my experience, fees their business to death and has no obligation to return the promise that they made when you actually get down to the legal contract. And that's sad, because I think Brandon Dawson is actually a brilliant businessman. And if he were not to have hundreds of companies that he's supposedly scaling, I mean, if he actually really parachuted into a business and were to focus, he's a brilliant business guy. I mean, he has the capacity to scale a business. But I think it's all become about, how many people can we shove in the top of this funnel, and not how many businesses can we truly transform? How many lives can we truly touch? We never in board meetings talked about impact, mission, vision, values. We talked about how we're going to dump this pig in the public markets, or how we're going to raise institutional capital. If I had a nickel for every time Brandon Dawson wrote $1 billion on a whiteboard, I'd be rich.
I got to tell you, I mean, I hate to just interrupt you, but when you were talking to JT and you mentioned that every time they would talk about growing 10X Health to the point where they could IPO, that the language they would use is dump this pig. Yeah. Those words indicate how they thought about the business, the value of the business, the value of the customers, the value of the investors. Like that took me by surprise.
It took me by surprise too. And it got under my skin every time, to the point where it wasn't specifically said in this particular meeting. We were in another one of these meetings. At this point, we're bringing our lawyers to meetings. And, Brandon Dawson would yell out in the middle of a meeting, "I'm the richest guy in the room." And as if that had something to do with the point that he was trying to make. And it would just irritate my wife and I, because we weren't having a contest over who was the wealthiest person in the room. We were having a contest over why we were shoving products and services that were bought outside of our company down the throats of our patients and our clients that they did not need, that we had not fully vetted.
Yeah.
And why were we doing that? And the conversation shifted to who's the wealthiest person in the room. That doesn't have anything to do with the practice of healthcare. And my wife stood up in that meeting and said, "Brandon, I want a divorce." He said, "I want a divorce." And
I'm taking the dog.
And I'm taking the dog, and I think at this point, I was just, give them the shares back. And we just wanted to be as far away from that organization as possible. And
another quick question, just before I forget, because we're getting, I know we're about close to wrapping up with our time. When I saw Dana White going on Grant's podcasts, being a guest on a growth con, sitting down next to him, having these chats as if they're old time friends. And I'm consistently amazed at the people that Grant is able to convince to come to these growth cons, and as speakers on stage with them. I assume they're being paid millions of dollars.
Oh.
When I see
several $1 million, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Tom Brady got, and someone can fact check me on this, something like $4 million just for his 45 minutes or something like that, right? So I don't know what they're paying someone like Dana White, who's also worth hundreds of millions of dollars, or honestly, even Donald Trump. It's like, what? How much did they pay Donald Trump to speak at GrowthCon, for the love of God? Okay, but when I see Dana going on GrowthCon, appearing at GrowthCon, doing podcasts with Grant, when I see 10X being one of the sponsors of Dana's new slap fight league, it made me think, oh, the relationship there is between Dana and Grant, or Joe and Grant. Is that the case? But is that the case?
Look, I don't want to put Dana White in the middle of this. It'd be a really interesting call for Brandon Dawson to call Dana White. Maybe ask him why he doesn't mention 10X Health.
Okay.
But I mean, that's between Dana and Brandon and Grant. I consider Dana an extraordinarily close, loyal friend. I mean, he has done so much for me personally and professionally, and so much for 10X Health.
Can I ask if your relationship with Dana is how you were able to get on the Joe Rogan Experience?
It was certainly part of it, for sure. When I talked to Joe, he mentioned to me that several people had been talking to him about me, and he saw the transformation with Dana. So it wasn't like Dana called him and said, "Hey, put Gary on your show," and Joe said yes. Joe actually sent me an Instagram. He sent me a DM and was like, "Hey, brother, I'd love to run a podcast with you. You're interested?" I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested. And I know that Dana had something to do with that. I mean, but there was a lot of information in the public media.
Yeah.
And when we sat down, he's like, hey, I just want to get to know you.
Okay.
His staff was very, clear about, hey, don't get on here and just turn this into a sales seminar for it. And I said, I'm not,
Yeah.
I just want to get to know you. What makes you tick? What are you doing in the world? How are you making an impact? And it was just a very easy conversation. It actually resulted in the highest grossing month in the operating history of 10X Health. And I immediately got a cease and desist. Because I didn't use the right verbiage, or I didn't use the link that allowed them to dump the leads from that podcast into a separate specific sales funnel. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? We just sold out of months and months of inventory. Like, we can't even service the amount of leads that came from that podcast. We can't keep enough inventory. Yeah. And you're saying I didn't do enough to promote 10X Health? Are you kidding me? It's the highest grossing, and still is to this day, the highest grossing month in the operating history of the company. And it was an argument over whether or not I used the link that Brandon Dawson provided that would allow him to dump them into these, landing pages and ClickFunnels and redirected email campaigns. And it was another thing that just bothered my wife and I, because we would take patients into 10X Health, and the next thing you know, they would be getting solicited for couples retreats with the Cardones. And some of these patients were furious. I actually talked to one of them last night, and we actually talked about this exact thing. He's a very, very famous DJ. And they were like, hey, I went to you for a medical service. How did my name get into a database where I'm being solicited for couples retreats and boot camps and workshops? Like, what are you doing with my data? How is it being passed from one operating company to another? That I didn't sign up to go on a retreat. I signed up to get my blood work and my genetic testing done. And those kinds of things, they were the little signs that, the organization was entirely oriented around sales. And the rewards for people that are selling the most, the rewards were for the people. And I want to be very clear. I made a lot of money in 10X Health. To say that I left for purposes of greed is so disconnected from the truth. I walked away from millions of dollars a year in income. The smartest thing for me to do, if I wanted to be greedy, if I wanted to just make money, would have been to keep my mouth shut, stay on the deck of 10X Health, take this abject failure of a test, shove it down the throats of the patients and the clients, pretend to agree that it was a great service to humanity, get on all the stages and all the podcasts and all the interviews and promote it, and then take my share of what I owned in the company, which was 11%, and take my affiliate share, which would have been 20%, and make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. I walked away from that. I didn't leave to go make more money. I make less money now than I did when I was there. This is purely about accountability. It is not about money for me. And the reason why every word that I say will be scrutinized is because the only hope at not letting the truth get out there is to destroy my reputation, and my wife's reputation, and make it appear as though we have a motivation that is other than what was in the best interest of the clients and the patients and the employees and the clinicians that were on that platform.
Well, it's a shame that they had decided to go this route. It's clear you and your wife had no intention of going to war with the Cardones or Brandon or Cardone Ventures. It's clear you guys were not trying to denigrate the company. You were not out there being whistleblowers. You were not out there trying to drag anyone through the mud. And
I never wanted this to happen.
And I think it's interesting that, your lawsuit against Elena Cardone is a $100 million lawsuit for defamation. Your lawsuit against Cardone Ventures is not for a specified amount of money. What is the outcome you're seeking from the lawsuit against Cardone Ventures?
Yeah, well, now it's to put a stop to this kind of practice. Now we have become a voice, and a platform for those that didn't have a voice before. So now we're actually going to give them a very large voice. So that obviously will play out in the courts. I don't think that depositions and discovery can get here soon enough. There's some iterations you have to go through in court before you actually get to the depositions and the discovery. I think the discovery is going to tell a very clear story. I think the depositions will tell a very clear story. I'm not looking forward to a long lawsuit. I know it's going to be a long lawsuit, but I am looking forward to the discovery and these depositions, because, the truth should just come out there and people should decide for themselves. It shouldn't just be Gary versus Brandon Dawson or Gary versus, Grant Cardone. Truth is, my beef is not even with Grant Cardone.
Now, I know Grant Cardone is obviously a partner in Cardone Ventures, but why is it that the lawsuit specifically names Brandon Dawson as an individual? So it's Cardone Ventures, Brandon Dawson as an individual. Why not Grant Cardone as an individual?
Because Brandon Dawson is responsible for what happened inside of 10X Health and Cardone Ventures. And I don't even think Grant Cardone knows the extent of it. And like I said, my wife and I said a year and a half ago that Natalie Dawson and Brandon Dawson would be the downfall of the organization. And I think you're going to watch that play out. Sadly.
And am I correct? Am I recalling correctly that when Cardone said, he said, I don't even want to be in this space anymore, make me an offer. You made him an offer, $50 million to buy the company back.
And he said, let's get in a room with the cigars and figure this out.
He wanted to do it.
Yes, Grant wanted us to get in a room and figure this out. And it was a very substantial number. And just to be clear, we said, we will buy your shares out at this valuation, or you can buy the shares from us at the same valuation. Mm-hmm. This is a very fair offer. I'm not trying to steal the company from you. I just want to save it because I care about it. I mean, I sold my primary residence, my first home, to start this company. And yes, we were in a strip mall. And as any entrepreneur knows, the fear and the anxiety, the fights you have with your spouse, the financial decisions, the oppressive level of the unknown that you go through starting a business because you believe in a business and you want it to work out because you think this service is really going to impact people's lives. You don't just give that up, right? We didn't walk away. I would have walked away years ago had it just been over the money. But there are people on the deck of that ship right now that Sage and I love and care about. And there are patients and clients that are family to us that are trusting that organization for their healthcare. And we didn't want to just abandon those people. To this day, as you and I speak today, my calendar is full every week doing coaching sessions for 10X Health clients with 10X on the line, because it was a promise that I made to those clients before we terminated our relationship. And Brandon Dawson and I, to his credit, have agreed that we should still service those clients because they paid for a service and they were expecting some coaching with me. They should still receive those. So I'm not going to turn my back on the clients. I'm only turning my back on the management. So those clients, my schedule is full every week during the week with these coaching calls that were booked months ago because it took so long sometimes to get on my schedule. And I said, as long as it takes for me to finish the promise that we made to those clients, I'll do. And to Brandon's credit, he said, I want you to do that too. It's the only thing that we agree on. It's not harming those patients and clients. And so, I really want to set the clients and the patients down easy. And I pray that the organization doesn't fold. I actually want to see it succeed. There's still lots of good people there. I can't emphasize that enough. Some of those people on that platform and the practitioners that are on that platform really do care, and they don't deserve to lose their jobs because of a spat that I'm having with Brandon. So I hope that the company survives all of this. I really do.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Last question, Gary. Is Grant Cardone a billionaire? You don't have to answer it unless you wanna. Is that a no comment?
Well, I'm not a billionaire either.
That's okay. And no shame in it. I'm not a billionaire either.
You're not? Okay.
I'm not. But I don't pretend to be either. Gary, I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I hope I can use my channel to also help tell more stories from people who well, want to speak out about their experience with Cardone Ventures. And
Oh, get ready. I mean, we've got, I mean, we're overwhelmed by the number of people that are prepared to speak out.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
Very soon.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right